Stories retire, we set them free, shaking the ground with epiphany. Fresh thinking loud, it's our decree. Unconventional wisdom dancing on the beat.
Hello, and welcome to Unconventional Wisdom about conventional wisdom. I know that you are going to be blown away by Aurora Winter, who is the guest today. She is going to drop all kinds of truth bombs and wisdom. So stay tuned for that. So, Aurora, why don't you introduce yourself to the listener?
Thanks, Kim. I'm an award-winning best-selling author, a serial entrepreneur, and a media trainer, and I'm the founder of Same Page Publishing, which is a company devoted to publishing books that make a difference.
I love that. Your random question, which is tell us your favorite quote.
I love this quote. It's actually from Jordan Peterson. He said, "It turns out that a book is more durable than a stone. It's
Huh.
more durable than a castle. It's more durable than an empire." And that's really interesting. And I love that because I think we forget that books are part of our legacy and they can leave a very long shadow. Look at how many people are still reading Marcus Aurelius, right? So I really love for people to know that your book can inspire, influence, guide, inform others about your unconventional wisdom a decade, 100 years, maybe hundreds of years from now. It's
Yeah.
exciting. It's
It gives you chill bumps.
absolutely.
Yeah. And I think it resonates with me too, because I think when you're talking about thought leadership, I'm a parent and I think about my kids. As a matter of fact, and I didn't get a chance to read it yet, but my daughter sent me a text today. I just saw the beginning of it, and it said something like, Mom, my friend is struggling with something, and I gave her some advice that you gave me,
Oh,
and it really helped her. And I was like, that's
those are the
wonderful.
moments that make you know that you really made a difference. I love that.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
And I think I want to just circle back to think about if that's codified, right, in a book,
Yeah.
and then it has even more legs to it.
And the interesting thing too is yes, codified for a book for the future generations, but the practice or the process of clarifying and codifying your message helps the thought leader becomes more crisp,
Yeah.
clear, commanding with their message. Because compelling messages don't just happen. They
Oh,
get
really?
polished and refined. Yes, really.
Sometimes it's funny that you say that, though. There's also the part of it where you're like, if I say that enough, then I guess it must be true. Right.
Yeah, I recommend leaning into the growth zone. So, to challenge yourself to collect stories from your own life, your own business, the clients' lives whose lives you've transformed, collect those stories and then practice saying them on
Right.
video or just write them down, practice them, talk to other people, and you'll find, oh, you can make the story shorter
Yeah.
and tighter and more concise until you have these stories as verbal assets you can draw upon at any time.
Yeah. Those are your nuggets.
Exactly. I think it's wise to always be collecting these kind of stories. Speaking of the conventional wisdom, I think the conventional wisdom can be if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
But in my experience, the best product doesn't win. The best story wins.
Mm,
So I know you and I have both got experience working with people from Silicon Valley, and they're all about the minimum viable product. But I like to invite people to get a masterful visionary pitch. So another kind of MVP. And when you have a masterful visionary pitch, doors open, bank accounts open, and things flow. But until you can articulate in really clear, compelling, concise words what you're up to, you will face obstacles. Could be that your product, your service, your SaaS is all fine. It's just your message that's missing.
right. And I think what you're saying even translates into management and leadership because it's not always the most technically proficient person that gets the promotion or the person who other people would identify as successor to a certain person. Often it is really the person who can tell the best story, right?
Exactly right.
The person who can sit around the table and be concise. Also, to stay on brand and stay on message.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And it's often not the smartest person in the room that gets promoted. People remember how you make them feel. So actually, sometimes really smart people make other people feel stupid and overwhelmed because they barrage a fire hose of information. And the other person is like, well, I don't know which part of this
Hmm.
is important. So it's valuable to have your minimal message, your masterful visionary pitch, down to what really matters. And
Right.
an example of that would be people are stunned when I share that data shows the value of a story. Let me put you in a tight pinch here. What do you think would be the difference in value selling a product without a story or with a story? Let's take an inexpensive product that's under $100.
Wow. Boy, I don't know. I'm sure the differential is significant. Let's say between 50 and 70% more.
Yeah, that's what people often think. They did this study, it's reported in the book Significant Objects, and they took 100 distinct objects and they offered them on eBay with a story or without a story. And the stories were written by 100 different people. And the stories added significance, but they didn't add to what you were going to get.
Right.
So, an example might be these are pot mitts. We've got them for sale. I remember I would come home from school and my mom used to make chocolate chip cookies and they smelled so good. And I'd tell her about my day and I'd have the cookies, they'd melt in my mouth. They were so great. And now I'm selling the pot mitts. You don't get the pot mitts, but you actually do get something that matters. You get significance. A story actually
Mhm.
adds value. The results were that the objects with a story sold for 27 times more,
Wow.
2,700% more. So many top executives think, oh, I'm too busy to work on my story. Steve Jobs practiced for 3 weeks before an Apple pitch. He practiced where to stand, what to say, his intonation for three
Hmm.
weeks. Why? Because it really moved the needle. So I would offer that most people know the 80-20 rule. 20% of your activities bring 80% of the results. I like to challenge people to do that twice. So, of that top 20% of activities that produce 80% of the results, 4% of those activities produce the bulk of the results. That 4% is mastering communication. And that's what I love to help people do.
Oh, I love that. All right. We've actually delved into this. But let me ask you more personally for you. What was some conventional wisdom that you followed early on? Something that you either saw in your family or somebody told you, or you just thought because you watch TV or whatever it is, that was going to be the marker of success for you. And then you really realize that it really doesn't work for you.
That's a great question. And I can tell you a few embarrassing stories. So I come from an academic family, very smart parents. My father was the dean of a university. My mother studied genetics. So around the dinner table when I was a child, we had the encyclopedia and the dictionary and actually a little chalkboard. So it was all about pedagogy. So I thought being smart was the key to success. When my husband and I started a business, we actually sold boats as tax shelter with tax shelter benefits. I won't go into all the details of that. But me thinking that being smart and clever was the answer, I gave people like 100 pages of documentation explaining all the tax shelter benefits and running all kinds of spreadsheets with numbers depending on what their marginal tax bracket was. This did not work. This was the wrong way to go. And it wasn't the masterful visionary pitch. It was overwhelming with data. So, what actually did work is a very clear, short phrase 5 weeks of sun, fun, and tax shelter. What? You don't expect tax shelter to come at the end of that with a picture of people on a sailing boat having fun in the sun. So that short, effective, surprising message with a beautiful picture of people having fun, and never mind the 100 pages, unless you really wanted them, actually doubled our profit margins. And we grew from a six-figure to a seven-figure company. So
Wow.
that is the value of honing your message and getting it clear, concise, compelling, and even a little surprising.
Sure. I'm always an advocate of really knowing who you're talking to, I think is really what I
Yes,
would say. Right.
absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And so, as a successful leader, what is one thing that people assume that you just have this nailed and something that you still wrestle with?
I wrestle with perfectionism. I am a recovering perfectionist. So what works for me is deadlines. And I always think it could be a little bit better, but I have to catch myself because sometimes I'm just making it different. So I love helping my clients with their books. And usually what happens is, okay, we absolutely have to lock this book so we can apply for awards, so we can get the advance review copy out to get the reviews from Kirkus Reviews, etc. The book has to be locked. And that's why I stopped working on it. Yes, I'm still working on that. On the other hand, it shows I love what I do.
I think maybe another way to say what you're saying is when is it good enough? And actually, it's very interesting. I'm curious what you think about this. So, in the Dan Sullivan book, 10X,
Yes, I know that book.
we'll put the link in the show notes so that you can get actually what the title is. At the end of each chapter, I listen to the audiobook. So he gets interviewed by the actual person writing the book about some of what his thoughts are that informed any particular chapter. And he said something that kind of blew me away because I would say probably for the last 10 years in my goals has been something around reaching my full potential. Or it might be something that I meditate on. And he had something so interesting to say about that, which is you'll never get there.
Yes. It's good. Otherwise, you might as well be dead.
There you go.
Done.
It reminds me of that idea of perfectionism, right? There's one place that you have to get to, and that's the place, right?
Yeah,
And I really love that. And basically, what he says to do instead, which I think is really wise, is where were you last week? Where were you last quarter? Where were you last year? Are you ahead of that?
yeah, the gap and the gain. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe it was in the gap. Maybe it
Oh, I'm
was.
sure they've mentioned it in both books,
Yeah.
Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy. I really
Yeah.
like that focus on where you've come from, but I also really value deadlines. For example, I have a YouTube channel, Strategic Basics, and I record the episode and then we edit it, and then it's got to go out Tuesday at 10. No more changes. And it's also wonderful to celebrate progress. It's nice to see we've got almost 25,000 subscribers now, and there's a momentum happening.
Absolutely.
So, momentum is more valuable than getting all angsty about one thing. You can polish one thing till you choke the life out of it if you're writing a book or a chapter of a book or even a social media post. Yeah,
Yeah. And I think, as I often tell clients, there are times when the extra effort and the extra time is meaningful.
correct.
When it's every time for everything. It's funny because before we started recording, I said I had just been talking to a client, Silicon Valley. They are in an inflection point in their business, and everybody agrees that they're an inflection point. Everybody agrees that the business is going to have to change. Their response is, we don't have time to do that. I get that, but I think we get into ruts around doing things the way that we've always done them.
And we can just fool ourselves into thinking that we are being productive when we're really just being busy. What could be more important than climbing up to the top of the tree and looking around and saying, wrong forest, right? Instead of sharpening the saw and continuing to saw down the trees in the wrong forest, let's notice where we are, where we're
Right.
going, and take massive action because product busyness can be the enemy of visionary leadership.
100%. The two things are not always the same thing. When we get really locked into, I have to get this exactly right. Like one social media post, if you did that with every social media post, no wonder you have no time.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Okay. So I'd love to ask you if you could rewrite the rule book on leadership, what is one outdated belief that you'd throw away and what would you replace it with?
So the outdated conventional belief is that leaders have all the answers. And
Mm,
I would suggest that leaders ask powerful questions.
right.
So it's much better to have an open mind and ask the right question than to have a closed mind and have the answer. Because as a leader, one of your main responsibilities is to surround yourself with clever, ambitious people who think differently from you and differently from each other. That will give the overall team the best edge. And so it's better for the leader to be the last one to speak. Well, maybe start off by asking a powerful question and then hear everybody out because the person who is introverted may hesitate to speak, but they may actually have something very valuable to add to the conversation. Whereas leaders are often extroverted, they can have confidence speaking and they can be a little bit too fast and rob the team of hearing from everybody else. So I would love to just get rid of the idea that leaders have the answers and instead propose leaders ask powerful questions.
I love that. There's so many gems that we can pull out of that. First of all, I agree with you 100%. I think some things to consider are you have to be confident enough in yourself to be able to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
And that is not always an easy thing to do. You know, it's interesting. Speaking of which, it makes me think. So I was at a meeting a couple of days ago, and I delivered this very extensive report. It was a really big project that I did. And anytime I used jargon, I really tried to not assume that people knew what initials meant. What's really interesting is that I used KPIs and I didn't define it because it didn't even occur to me that somebody wouldn't know what KPIs are. And just listener, if you need to know, they're key performance indicators. What is interesting is this incredibly smart real estate developer, right?
Mm.
Who has done huge projects, said, what are KPIs? And I just love that because he knows he's a smart guy. He just looked at something and didn't understand and just asked the question. And by the way, I'm going to out myself. And I actually did a video on this a while ago on LinkedIn, which is I probably wouldn't have asked the question. I would have Googled it on the side.
I like to think that the only stupid question is the one you don't ask.
There
Or
we go.
Google. You can Google it. That's fine. It shows confidence that he was willing to ask that.
Absolutely. And what I always say is there's always somebody else in the room who also doesn't know, who's not brave enough to ask.
Exactly.
And then I think the other thing, though, that you said, you got to put your ego aside. You've got to be able to hire diverse minds.
Yes.
And I think that is a really important thing. We tend to be attracted to people who are like us,
Yeah.
right? And if you don't take that bias out of your thinking when you're hiring, you're going to end up with a lot of yes people on your team.
You're going to end up in an echo chamber. And there are various tools to help. I'm sure you're aware of DISC, or I actually like the brain dominance, which just basically divides us into four different kinds of people. CEOs are yellow, they're visionary. They need to know why. Or the scientists are the blue area. They need to know what are we doing. The people are red and they need to know who is involved. And then the implementers need to know how. So you can even listen for the language. And if you hear the person talking about people, they're filtering by who. If they're a big picture person, they can't really hear you until they hear why. A scientist or engineer needs to know what, and then the implementer needs to know how do I go about that. So even without giving a in-depth personality test, if you just pay attention to that, you can notice where people are. And what's good about communicating powerfully and effectively is hit all four.
That's right. Exactly. Because you need those points of view.
And you need those basic questions answered because you're going to have a natural tendency to drill all the way down. But if you haven't answered, why are we doing this and what is involved and how are we going to do it, then you've lost potentially three-quarters of the audience.
And I also think that when we talk about this, you hit on another really important point, which is psychological safety and
Mhm.
really creating an environment where it's not just okay, but it's encouraged to turn the cube over on ideas. Not okay to be disrespectful to the people in the room, not okay to make it personal, but really creating an environment, like I said, where you can turn the cube over in a lot of different ways and
Yeah,
that everybody comes from it from a different point of view, and that's viewed as really important.
exactly right. And I loved what you shared. I think people can get sloppy if they haven't been trained in communication and get sloppy about attacking the other person rather than attacking the idea. It's totally fine to attack an idea or a process for how we're going to do that or even debate why are we doing this, but it's not okay to attack the person just because they have said something different. Everything should be safe in a brainstorming setting. Every idea is welcome in
Right,
a setting that is a brainstorming, in my
right.
experience. That really works best. But the leader does need to set that container.
That's right. I told you there were going to be so many gems in this. The last thing that I want to pick up on that you said, because I think it is super, super important. It's something that leaders miss all the time, which is the leader speaks last.
Yes, exactly right. That's very
And
important.
one thing, just as a trainer and a facilitator, I am always looking around the room to who hasn't said anything. So often there will be somebody in the room who starts to say something, and then somebody else with a stronger voice takes the floor. And I
Yeah.
am always looking for that. Oh, Laura, it looked like you were going to say something. What do you want to contribute? What do you want to say?
And I think the thing to also understand is that people figure out what they think by speaking when somebody else is listening. So the first time that Sarah, or whatever her name is, articulates this thought, it might be a bit rambling because it's the first time it's come to light. But if you have a bit of patience and can listen to her, there could just be a gem in those words. And this is why I really think that free speech really matters, and also why I do the spoken author method, because many people, when they try to write a book, they stare at a blank page because they have this idea that the words should flow out. The first draft should be like a New York Times bestseller. But it doesn't actually work that way. What happens is you get more clear what you think by speaking when somebody else is listening, because it changes what comes out of your mouth as you see the other person lean forward, or the other person says, "Tell me more about that," or the other person glazes over with disinterest. The attentive listening is like a third person or a third energy between. And I don't know, I just find it's amazing how much deeper people go when somebody is truly deeply listening to them.
Yeah, I love that. What is one unconventional habit or mindset shift that's helped you grow your business?
I was just mentioning it there, but I think what I want to share here is the mindset set shift that I think will be valuable to everyone is entrepreneurs solve problems. So therefore, every time you see a problem, you should go, "Yay, there is a problem. If I can solve that problem for myself, perhaps that can be part of the problems that I solve for others."
Huh, maybe I needed you yesterday when my battery died and my whole afternoon got blown. There's a problem that I have to solve. No.
There's a problem that you have to solve. Well, as an entrepreneur, we don't necessarily want to solve all kinds of problems,
Yeah.
but what I did notice is that people struggle for 3.5 years to write their book. And that is a problem that I've solved many times because I've published 10 of my own books and I'm a ghostwriter. So I love helping people solve that problem. And the cool thing is, like a professional writer can probably not write 8,000 words in a day, but a normal expert can speak 8,000 words in an hour interview. So it just changes the speed at which you
Uh-huh.
can create a book or any
Well,
content.
let me ask you about growing that business because clearly you have done some other things, right?
Many other businesses, yes.
As I understand, they've all been successful things. This is clearly your passion. What has helped you grow this business?
What's interesting is every time I shift businesses, there's a little awkward moment where I'm pivoting. And I mentioned it in my book, Turn Words into Wealth, but there's also a YouTube video. If you go to YouTube and you search hermit crabs changing shells, and it's very cute, the video that you'll see. And I think this is the entrepreneurial experience. When we're changing businesses or pivoting, we have this naked moment where we're like a little hermit crab, leaving the safety of one shell that worked, but it's gotten too small, and then running around naked, very exposed to predators, and then finding another shell, and then going, oh, there's a hole in this shell, or this shell is perfect, or whatever the case may be. So, to fully answer that question, I think the honest answer is first, I noticed that the business that I was in was too small for me, or that I'd gotten a bit bored of it. And when I'm bored, or when anybody's bored, I don't think we're doing our most brilliant work and we're not in the right space. So then I listened for the problems that people came to me with. People came to me and said, how did you get on so many TV and radio and podcasts? How did you write so many books? How did you get so many book awards? How did you get so many book reviews? And I thought, I'm listening. I'm like, okay, people want that. So then I offered that. I actually offered that through a little tiny book called Marketing Fast Track. I offered my email list to a little short book based on a 1 hour interview as a minimum viable product with hopefully a masterful visionary pitch in it. And then I offered 5 videos, and then people could sign up for a business breakthrough call with me at bookcall.biz. And that generated $250,000 of new business in 90 days. So I went, oh, proof of concept. And so then I pivoted from the coach training business I was in before into a business that's called samepagepublishing.com that is more around helping people as a media trainer, as a publisher, as a ghostwriter, helping them with their marketing and their message. And how I basically have grown that business is just very simply, I looked at what do I love to do? I like talking, so I'm on podcasts, and I like writing books. So people either find me from hearing me on podcasts or they read one of my books like Turn Words into Wealth, and they check me out at samepagepublishing.com and sign up for a free business breakthrough call at bookcall.biz. And one thing leads to another. And I found like when I'm doing, probably this would apply to you as well, Kim, I want to hear from you, but when I'm passionate and excited about what I'm doing, I do great work and then people renew and they refer. So I have a simple marketing funnel. I don't really do a lot of social media. I'm not really trying to be all things to all people. I just double down on what I love doing. And I'd love to hear what helps you grow your business. But for me, it's podcasts, and the right book on Amazon can reach people around the world.
I love that. Yeah, I don't coach everybody, right?
Right.
Like I am very clear about like who I love to work with.
Yeah.
My business is called Kim Miller-Hershon Coaching and Consulting, right? People better be saying good things about it because
Cute.
they're just talking about me, right? And so I really like leaders that are managing people. They're probably director or above, or they're entrepreneurs. They own their own business. It's somebody who works for an entrepreneur or a law firm, and they have one of two issues. Either they're struggling with managing people. The second thing is the person who says yes to everything. They are so uber confident that they are just overwhelmed and stressed.
Mm.
And it's succinct, it's clear. My other criteria is you got to be willing to look at your stuff. You can't just be wanting a strategy. You got to be willing to look at what's in between those two beautiful ears of yours.
What you're pointing out there is really good and kind of unconventional wisdom because a lot of people think, no, just give me the strategy. But actually, mindset comes before everything. So the
That's
fact that you're
right.
really clear on who your ideal client is and you can let them know if they're not willing to look at their stuff, you're not the right fit for
That's
them.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of good coaches, right? If you don't want to do that, there's no judgment, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the important thing is that my people are my people, right? And they are attracted to me in the same way that I am attracted to them. And listen, I know a lot of coaches. Listener, if you need a coach and I'm not your coach, give me a call. I'll tell you who I think would be a good coach for you. Because I think at the end of the day, it only works when you have that level of trust when you're working with the right person.
It has to
So
be
it
a match. It's like
has to be a
dating.
match.
It's like dating.
There you
Everybody
go.
can be worthwhile, but doesn't mean that there's a match. So yes, you want to work with
That's right.
the
So
right coach or the right
that's right.
communications expert.
Exactly. They want to make sure that I'm the right coach for them, and I want to make sure that I am
Yeah.
the other way around. However that works. You know what I mean. All right. Let's just wrap this up here because such a great conversation. Let's just wrap up with one last question, which is leaders often feel imposter syndrome. So it's a two-part question. If that comes up for you and if you get triggered, where will you normally get triggered and what do you do about it?
It's good to remember that even Einstein called himself an involuntary swindler. So if Einstein experiences imposter syndrome, I'm not alone if I experience it. I actually turn to cognitive behavioral therapy. I have a process I wrote about in a different book called Grief Relief in 30 Minutes. And it's a 5 step cognitive behavioral therapy process to interrupt negative thinking. And I usually one of the 5 questions will create a complete turnaround. So it's a simple process that I turn to. Also, I check in with the basics. Have I had enough sleep? Have I eaten something? Am I thirsty? You'd be amazed how many times a negative spiral of emotions is triggered from just your basic physical needs not being met. So I make sure to exercise every day, drink water, make sure I've eaten something. But then cognitive behavioral therapy is my friend. So check, is this thought in the past, the present, or the future? How do I feel? Could I just be allowing this thought, like neutral observation, like something coming in the mail? Doesn't have to be a personal attack. What's the contrary of this thought? Can I find truth in the exact opposite? And then what am I going to do about it? What action can I take right now?
First of all, thank you. I love that. Cognitive behavioral therapy, you might have heard it. It's CBT. So if anybody's heard that, that's what that stands for. I think what I love about what you're saying are these are really grounding,
Yeah.
right? So it takes it out of the spirally, I'm swirling, and really grounds you.
So
Is
important to remember that we are not our thoughts and we are not our feelings. So just a little noticing that you're not your thoughts or your feelings, then you can witness them with curiosity. Maybe there's something valuable for you there. Maybe it's like a little 4-year-old kid that's, I want a chocolate bar. You can just say, no, mommy hears you, but no. Or maybe that little child does have something useful.
You know what? Actually, that is so funny that you say that because I was at Costco, which is like a big, I know people are listening, not from the United States, but it's like a big store where you can get a lot of things. And you know what's very funny is that's where my battery died
Oh gosh.
in the parking lot. But what's really funny is that I had a list and I was doing my list and I walked by a thing of Dubai chocolates, which is all the rage right now. So I just impulsively bought it and I brought it home and I said to my husband, "Do you want these?" And he said, "No, I don't want them." And I'm like, "Oh, I actually don't want to eat them either." Going to a wine tasting event tonight and I'm like, chocolates. So
Perfect gift. You didn't even know you needed it, but
that's right. I was not the parent. I was the 5-year-old yesterday. I
wow.
wanted some chocolate. And then I looked at it and I was like, wait a second. We don't want to eat it. And B, we certainly don't want it around the house.
Let's just get rid of that.
Yeah, let's just get rid of that. We're not even going to open it before we're just taking it away.
The
So,
other tip about imposter syndrome that I think is so valuable, which I wrote about in my book, Turn Words into Wealth, is actually they did an experiment with kids who were in the third grade. I think it was 200 kids, something like that. It was a very big test. And they gave them increasingly difficult jigsaw puzzles to do. And then they praised the kids for, oh, you must be really smart or you tried really hard. And the kids who were praised for being smart gave up earlier when the puzzles got harder. But the kids who were praised for trying really hard enjoyed the harder puzzles and worked on them longer. And the takeaway from this is don't expect yourself to be really smart. That's fixed mind thinking. But if you can praise yourself and others for trying really hard, you will become better at whatever you work on with
yeah,
the willingness to have a growth mindset. And of
right.
course, that is based on research that was reported in the book Mindset, which I shared in my book, Turn Words into Wealth.
And it's interesting that you say that, right? Because it goes back to that perfection, right? And the
Yeah.
idea of the full potential, right? Which is really that in action, which is look at where you were to where you are, growth mindset,
Yes.
versus somehow I'm always looking from where I am and wanting something different and more, right? Which, I mean, having goals and wanting to grow, great, nothing wrong with that. But also, too, the idea of that can also be, depending on how you put it in your own mind, it can be never enough.
Exactly. And the other thing to catch is your words. So my son was a great coach for me on this. I said, I'm just not technical. And he called me out on that. How much time have you spent trying to learn to do that thing? And I'm like, zero. And so notice your language
Yeah,
and put some effort into the things. Try really hard at the things
right.
that you want to learn.
Yeah,
Give yourself a pass that you don't do it right the first time. It's okay. Life is about
yeah.
progress. Life is not about perfection. It's about learning, growing, and contributing.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think the sort of last word on this, I think, is watch when those words don't serve you anymore. And here's just a perfect example, right? So I'm a huge Zumba fanatic. Okay. And so I was saying for the longest time, oh, nobody would accuse me of being a good dancer. And it's funny and it's cute. And I said it recently and I was like, you know what? I don't think that serves me.
Good catch.
I'm like, nope, I'm not going to actually say that anymore because it isn't the point of doing Zumba. I'm not on a dance competition team
Yeah.
and I love it and I get exercise and I love to dance. And what does it matter what anybody else thinks about how I look?
I love that.
You
That is a
know?
good point.
Yeah. All right, friends. Thank you so much. I told you there were going to be tons of gems and truth bombs and lots of good stuff. So you know what to do. Listen, download, subscribe, share it, tell your friends about it. And Aurora, thank you so much for spending this time with us. Super appreciate it and appreciate you. And we will see you all next time.
Cliches retire, we set them free. Shaking the ground with epiphany. Fresh thinking loud, it's our decree. Unconventional wisdom dancing on the beat.